went to the drive-in. Will you tell them that we went to the drive-in?
We are going in reverse on this one. We did the sequel first, so now let's do the original. Frankenstein Conquers the World from 1965 is also known as Frankenstein vs. Baragon. This was directed by legendary Toho director Ishiro Honda. The music was composed by mighty Akira Ifukube and was produced by Tomoyuko Tanaka, who also played a big part in bringing about 95 to 100% of Toho's monsters to life. This sci-fi horror movie has a fantastic cast to boot. Let's not waste any time and dive right in. We're going to do the American version on this one, as we did for War of the Gargantuas. This was originally released in 1966 in North America, but the 2007 DVD release, unfortunately, which is what we are going off of, is a little bit different than that one as well. Why? I heard a few reasons. Stuff was lost, legal reasons, and I just plain don't know. We open with Nazi soldiers coming to take something from Dr. Rosendorf, played by Peter Mann, and he's not happy about it. The Nazis hop in a sub and give the box to a Japanese sub. They bring the box back to Japan, and it turns out to be the monster Frankenstein's heart. Unfortunately, they happen to bring the heart back just in time for the Hiroshima bombing on August 6th, which, as you can guess, is going to give a lot of radiation off and help our monster heart grow. 15 years later, we have Dr. James Bowman, played by Nick Adams. He's helping the people try to survive the post-bombing and dealing with radiation sickness. He feels kind of guilty for what happened. He is joined by Dr. Sueko Togami, played by Kumi Mizuno, or Yuzo Kawaji, played by Tadao Takashima. So around town, there are a lot of strange things going on. Food getting stolen, pets being eaten, and weird things like that. Turns out it's this kid running around town. And this is our main monster, Frankenstein. He's actually played by two different actors. Younger Frankenstein is played by Kichiro Kozami, and the older is played by Kuwajo Furata. They bring him back to the lab for testing. And like all good monster movies, here comes the press. But they actually need their help to find out who this kid is. Elsewhere, on the other side of the country, our second monster appears, Baragon! And he destroys an oil refinery from underground.
Guess he doesn't like surf rock too much. But he is growing pretty quick.
After all the letters that came back after the press put out who this kid might be, they get a lead from one guy, Mr. Kawawa, played by Yoshiro Techikara. He says he thinks this kid is the heart that he delivered to Japan during the Second World War.
Frankenstein.
Yuzo flies to Frankfurt, Germany to meet Dr. Rosendorf. He pretty much tells him that if this is the Frankenstein monster's heart, it's invincible, but there's only one way to be sure. What they're going to have to do is cut off a limb and see if it grows back, and if that limb becomes alive. But that's a heavy trade to see if this experiment fails or works. Totally way off topic and has nothing to do with this movie, but I'd like to pretend that this is one of the Frankenstein monster hearts that was created by Dr. Victor Frankenstein from the Hammer movies. Sorry, moving on. Suego is opposed to the idea because she's kind of growing attached to the monster. Dr. Bowman is on the fence, and Yuzo... not really sure what he's up to yet. Later that night, he brings in a camera crew to fill the monster. I don't know. This must be a side hustle or something. But if you guessed this was going to piss the monster off and cause it to escape...
That is correct.
The monster visits Sueko before he takes off into the hills. Back at the zoo where he escaped from, they find his hand crawling on the ground. He must have broke it off to escape because that's how he got out of the chains. And that confirms it. He is the Frankenstein monster. In the meantime, the doctors run some tests on the hand they found while the army is out trying to find the Frankenstein monster. But they're probably not going to have any luck because he's out for a swim. And his hand grew back pretty quick. Unfortunately, back at the lab, the hand died. Turns out that it wasn't getting enough protein, which makes them wonder how much could the big Frankenstein monster need to stay alive. We have a Baragon attack!
I guess he doesn't like surf rock either. Wasn't surf rock huge back then?
Even though Baragon is purple, and Frankenstein's monster is...
He's Caucasian.
Frank is going to take the blame for this attack. But one of the others plea to have the monster spared, but...
I'd just like to add that where the disaster happened, nobody saw Frankenstein.
It might mean nobody's alive who saw him.
And these reporters are dicks. Mr. Kawaii returns with some more information for them. He's pretty certain that there is another monster besides Frankenstein running around. The doctors set out into the woods to try to find the monster themselves. During the exploration, Yuzo turns heel and tells them he thinks the monster should be killed, but he wants to save the heart and brain for him to study. Kinda odd that he's our bad guy all of a sudden, but Baragon isn't having any of this trickery either. Right before Sueko is about to be eaten, Frankenstein's monster jumps in to save her. Also during the battle, Frankenstein rescues Yuzo from a certain doom and returns him back to the other two doctors. The fight goes on for a good while until Frank grabs a couple of torches, randomly, and lights the whole valley up on fire. Frankenstein is able to defeat Baragon, but unfortunately for him, the ground collapses underneath him, or it's an earthquake of some sort, and he's buried under the earth. This was one of the major changes in the endings. Right before the earth kind of collapses under Frankenstein, a giant octopus shows up on land, and he fights that monster and defeats it too, right before the earth gives way. The end. This actually might be one of my favorite non-Godzilla Toho movies. I didn't see it till it was later released on DVD in North America. The story is pretty interesting, once again proving Frankenstein and his monster will never die. The characters are pretty good too, and Nick Adams is stellar as always. The last monster fight is also really good. It's the only one in the movie, but it's damn worth the wait. Like I said before, Baragon is a great monster, and they should have used him a lot more in movies. He shows off a lot of his attacks and powers in this one. We really don't get him again fully in a movie until all monsters attack. He wasn't even in Final Wars. If you love Japanese monster movies besides Godzilla, Frankenstein Conquers the World is a must. I highly recommend this one.